There we go. Okay, now where's the layout? Come on, layout. Come on, layout. Looks like we're not going with a layout tonight because it doesn't want to work.
Yikes.
Come on, layout.
Come on, layout. Okay.
No, this is the budget stream.
The budget stream. There we go. Perfect.
Listen.
Yeah. For some reason, the layout or the overlay isn't loading. Hold on.
Oh. Hello.
Are we good? Hello?
What just
Oh
happened?
no, Vipey.
My Discord just restarted. All right.
What did I do?
Hello.
There's a patch of Mochrie. You know, this is the thing.
I thought I did something wrong.
No, my Discord just started restarting out of nowhere.
All right, there we go.
I pressed a button by mistake.
Okay, now we can start the stream. All right, welcome to our 5th episode of Eye of the Storm. We are your hosts, Kagirii and Vipey, and during our episode today, we'll be discussing mechanical heroes, DPS, and micro strategies with Mochrie. Dang it. I was gonna get it.
Mochrie, yeah.
With Mochrie. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what heroes you main, where we can find you on the internet?
Okay, so I'm Mochrie. I'm currently a competitor with Scythe Esports right now. I played with them in the Invitational. I also worked with them back when HGC was still a thing. I worked particularly with Nesper, trying to get his Tracer up. Felt really good about that. And I'm also competing in Fight Night tomorrow versus Revive Esports. I think that's also on the HeroesHearth channel, so y'all can see me there. I have a Twitch at Mochrie1713. That's Mochrie, not Mochrie or Mochrie or anything like that. And I like to focus on Tracer a lot. I'm not a one trick like a lot of people claim or believe, but it's a particular area of focus for me that I really enjoy. I just love those ranged auto attackers. Something that I can really just flex my mechanics on and show it off. So, you know, that's kind of who I am. You know, I just come in. I do the pew-pews and I leave the brain to everyone else. So it's really fitting for today's episode, actually.
You're basically you're probably who I, you know, hated a lot when Tracer came out.
Oh, trust me.
She was my arch nemesis for the longest time before I figured out how to counter her.
No, I've left a lot of people really salty. I thought it was funny, you know. I was just on Ready Up yesterday with McIntyre, and there have been times where I've made McIntyre quit his stream in rage, you know, after I was dancing on him, and that was always in the back of my mind while we were playing together, and I just thought it was funny. Yeah, everybody hates you, you know. It's a fun life.
Poor McIntyre. I don't see Tracer too much lately. I used to see her all the time, but I don't see her anymore.
And then they were like, this Mochrie guy, he's doing way too well. No.
What exactly did they nerf on her?
Oh god, what didn't they nerf on her?
Her damage, her E.
So her damage is the lowest it's ever been. Her pulse bomb does the lowest damage it's ever done. Her melee does the lowest damage it's ever done. Her recall is 10 seconds longer than it was on release. Her bullet spray, I think, has been nerfed since release. What haven't they nerfed on that hero? Basically, the only thing that's better than it was on release is... and she had 3 viable builds on release, by the way, and now she has 1. She had Dive Bomb build, she had the recall build, she had the triple blink build, and she had the auto attack build, and now she just has the auto attack build. So I mean, that I could rage for 3 hours about that, and we wouldn't get anywhere.
Is there any place for her in the meta anywhere, or is she just?
100%, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So
she's not completely useless.
Honestly, and this is a kind of controversial opinion that I have, that I share very heavily with Cavalier Guest, who was the coach for Scythe Esports. I worked a lot with him. He also helped us out with the University of Houston back when I was in Heroes of the Dorm. Is that we believe that, like, virtually every hero actually has a situation where they're good. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any hero that just has absolutely 0 good situations for them. It just comes down to sometimes those situations are very niche, or sometimes they require a lot of practice. Like Tracer, very mechanical hero. When I go a few days without playing Tracer, I don't even feel that good on her. When I'm like in tournament mode and all that, I'm like keeping myself to minimum 2-3 games of Tracer a day. you know, just staying on top of my mechanics. And it's not realistic to expect, you know, like this high level of dedication for. I'm not saying 3 games a day is a super high level of dedication, but when you multiply it out, to like, you know, 10, 20 heroes, it is. I think that just when you take it down to the niche situations and the amount of practice it would take to stay in tip-top shape on every single character, that's why we don't see every single hero played in a given situation. It comes down to practice time more than anything.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say Tracer has a place in the meta. And it's not even a like super niche one either. Like, I don't know if you saw, but when we played the Invitational, we played 4 games in the Invitational versus it's escaping me right now. But they banned Tracer first ban all 4 games. Like, they just weren't gonna let us have it. So absolutely 100% yes. Tracer and pretty much everyone else has their place in the meta right now.
That's what I always say, like, in my stream. Whenever somebody ever comes in and be like, oh, X hero is trash, or X hero is like...
Oh, I hate that, you know?
I usually say, like, you know, it depends on how good you are with the hero. And every comp, I feel... Now, you know, stop me if you think, you know, otherwise, but every comp I feel can win depending on if you play to its strengths and weaknesses. If you play your comp completely wrong, of course, you're not going to win the game. But if you...
I do think... Yeah. Sorry, go for it.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I was going to say, I do think that there are definitely some comps where you're making it really hard on yourself.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And you know, people will hear what we're saying and they'll think that means that you should always be able to win with any comp, which isn't necessarily the case. Like, you should, but just, you know, you shouldn't have this defeatist attitude going straight into games where you think things are lost. And I think a lot of that comes from this sort of mentality that people have where, you know, you see certain heroes as just irredeemably bad. You see certain players as irredeemably bad because you've had them 3 times in your games and they played super poorly. Like, that's, you know, people have these confirmation biases about these kinds of things. I've had Cure in my games, you know, like throw and all that. And I've had HGC players throw, and I've had super random gold players do really well. So it just doesn't serve you well to go into a game thinking that it's a loss. So
it's even that. And it's also the fact when you see someone picking a hero that you wouldn't agree with, and you tell them basically to pick something else, like play ETC, it's what we need, but they have no idea how to play that hero. It's not the right, you know, let them play what they're good at and work around it. Like
when I was personally climbing ranked, that was one thing I talked a lot about on my stream, was just my philosophy about like how to climb. I was never a player that was all about like, oh, you got to carry. I was more about like just doing all the little things, right? Having discipline, sort of playing the odds in your favor. What I would do in that situation, I go to that player's profile and I'm looking, what role do we need to have them on? You need to have them at their offlaners? Okay, I'm looking at their warriors and assassins. I'm looking at the ones they have at a certain XP level and whatnot. And I'm thinking, okay, he's got Malthael, he's got Sonya and all that. And that's where I take my suggested heroes from. You know, I'm not just throwing them out in a vacuum, wondering if he ever even has 3 games on it. I'm saying this guy's level 37 Sonya. Sonya's actually pretty good here. That's what I'm going to suggest. And I feel like that little step on its own has probably bumped me up a significant amount of games just over the years of playing ranked. So
yeah, it's been a huge mystery of like how to rank up in HOTS, because it's such a such a group, a team based, you know, XP gain, all that jazz. So it's definitely, like you said, it would be really hard to carry. You really got to get those macro strategies down, which we talked about last episode. We talked all about macro strategies. But now with you, Mochrie, I got it right.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about DPS and micro strategies, which not everybody in our stream might know what micro is. Can you explain exactly what micro strategies is in HOTS?
Okay, so this is a big differentiation and skill that a lot of people should be aware of. So macro, you think about that, that's the overall team direction. That's where the brains come in. That's where the planning comes in. You know, like, what are we doing as a team? When are we taking these camps? What's our strategy? Micro, on the other hand, is a lot more individual. You know, you're talking about what's each person doing? What are their individual actions? What are their mechanics looking like? You know, you're talking about individual outplays and stuff like that. That's micro. You're talking about camp timings. You're talking about team movements, team placements, and that kind of thing. That's macro. So, like I said earlier, I focus a lot more on the micro side of things. I would let Cavalier guest and Zane hide on Scythe. They're huge masterminds at this kinds of things. They have the brain crazy high, and I'm just like, just sit here and let me pew you know. So, and just let me play my matchups right. You know, like matchup knowledge, 1v1s, mechanics, any of that stuff. That's micro.
Okay. So one of the things I want to talk about first, which I had a lot of trouble with today, actually. I always kept tapping when I should have backed and saved my tap for later.
Okay.
So, like, when is the best time when should you tap versus when you should, like, do a full back in the game?
Okay. So, well, how do I put this? A big way that I like to think about any form of decision making at all is the opportunity cost. So you think, what do I lose when I back versus when I tap? Because, you're saying, I'm going to lose a little bit of pressure in order to just get myself back into fighting shape, So when you tap, it's very fast and it keeps you in the action. So that's much more suited for when you have a dire pressing need to stay where you are. So think about it this way. Like, say, for instance, you want to go back to lane, or say you want to go back to base and then come back to lane. You're looking at being out of lane for potentially like 25, 30 seconds. And if your team isn't able to cover your lane while you're gone, that's just a wave of missed soak right there. And we all know a wave of missed soak can mean you're down a talent later, and that can actually mean that you lose a team fight, and that snowballs you into losing a game. So you have to think about it. Okay, can we cover the cost of backing? Like, you can back very safely when you know that you're not about to fight, when you don't need to be pressuring right now. Like, say, for instance, the enemy team just shows all 5 on the other side of the map, and you're at 30% health and mana, but you can literally see all 5 of them on the other side of the map. This is a situation that is direly calling for you to pressure right now. This is not the time to be backing. This is a time where you need to be applying pressure or coming over. But say, for instance, you also have another situation where, how do I put this? You have 2 people dead, and you just need to have 1 person in each lane. You got a 3-lane map covering the lanes, getting that soak. If you back and your team doesn't have enough wave clear to catch both of those waves, like their wave and the wave you missed, you're looking at costing your team experience. Or say, for instance, you're going into Battlefield of Eternity. If I get low in like the first 2-3 minutes of Battlefield of Eternity, I'm actually going to do a full back instead of tapping most of the time. Because if I tap, a lot of times that means that I won't have my tap when I need it during that immortal fight phase. It's really important to have it, it's really important and helpful to just be able to go say, I'm going to go tap during halftime for this immortal phase and come back and just be ready to go. Whereas if you back, you're looking at maybe 20, 25 seconds out of action. So and I know I'm ranting about this, but I'm just going to sum it up like this. Do you have time to leave? Do you have time to go all the way back to base? Can your team cover for you? Is your team going to be missing you while you're gone? Mm-hmm. If not, go back and preserve those tap cooldowns for when you're going to use them for fights. Tapping during fights is actually huge. If you guys can say, hold on, let's back up and let's tap. That's big for Infernal Shrines. That's big for Volskaya Foundry, Battlefield of Eternity, any map where you're realistically looking for that. So just opportunity cost. That's what I would sum it down to.
Yeah, I want to talk mostly about Volskaya in that situation because it takes a really long time to cap the actual objective in Volskaya. So I would say that's kind of a situation where you can back off and can do a full back in the middle of, the objective part of the game. I can't think of any other, except for Dragonshire, maybe.
Yeah, most other maps, if you're backing during the objective, you're just looking at giving that objective up.
Right.
But Volskaya is a little different in the fact that it takes just so long. But it's interesting that you mentioned Volskaya because University of Houston, when we were on it, we actually had a super good win rate on that map. And part of the reason that I credit that to, in addition to a million other things, is that when we would get that first Triglav, if we couldn't entirely take down the mid fort, like say we take down the mid gate after we get that first Triglav, and we don't think that we have it in us to take down the mid fort, we'd actually walk the Triglav top lane and hard focus the healing fountain over the wall. Even over the towers, we would hard focus that healing fountain. Because now going into the second Triglav that's in the top lane.
Oh, they won't have a tap.
Exactly. We have tap and they don't. So it's saying, we're not going to get that much out of this first one, but the second one, we're going to win that. They're not going to have tap. That means not only is it harder for them to win the Triglav, it's also harder for them to defend the Triglav after we get it in the top lane. So that's like shows sort of the double-sided nature of all of this. Like, think about it this way, all of this micro that you need to know, not only is it so important for you to know and understand, once you understand it completely, you can start to realize how you can interfere with the other team's usage of it. Mm-hmm. So, Like you need to understand that basis of sort of when you can back, when it's appropriate to tap. Like if it's very early in the Volskaya phase, Volskaya is a map that often sees 2 or 3 different little skirmishes over the same objective. Being able to both understand it builds you into just being able to manipulate the enemy team and really exert a higher level of dominance than what a lot of people would expect out of the game. So I think it's actually really good you mentioned that, because that's such a big dynamic for just team interaction.
And such a big advantage for your team in general.
Yeah. And then, like, it's also important that your team recognizes that as well. And this is edging more into the macro side of things. But, you know, when we had that knowledge, we've destroyed their healing fountain, ours is still up. We would often say, hold on, you know, like we've got this fight, we're poking back and forth a bit. Let's just go tap, you know, like let's just go disengage and let's just go tap. So this is just one example of how understanding that micro knowledge on every individual hero and what's important about it leads you to making these more informed macro decisions overall, and just succeeding in the micro frees up your macro. It's very just connected.
This is why, you know, I've said this multiple times during Eye of the Storm. I forget who originally said this, but I think it was McIntyre actually. He said HOTS is easy to learn, hard to master. And I think just exactly what we were talking about just now is why it is hard to master. Because you got all these little things that you can do in order to disadvantage the enemy team or, you know, bring in favor of your team that you might not think of all the time.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But yeah. So in terms of managing your tapping or your backing, how can you manage your cooldowns on your hero to best benefit your team in a team fight or in the early laning phase? Like, you know how, so on Jaina, I'm really bad at this. On Jaina, I use my W on the waves. I use every single, I started off in this game with Sylvanas, so wave clear is like the thing that I always go for, and I have to clear a wave fast. I'm very impatient. So I use every single ability of Jaina's to clear a wave. You're not supposed to do that. I know.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Vipey.
No, I mean that's a big thing. Like I actually can relate when I don't play Jaina that much, but I know what you mean. Like you drop a blizzard, you use your E, you're like everything's dead, and then blizzard's going on for like 20 more seconds, and you're like,
whatever.
You know. But it's heroes like that. Like most people don't realize that Kael'thas has the best mana management out of most mages. That he can clear away without even using anything.
Maybe I should play Kael'thas.
You just you can use your W with your trait, get an instant no mana cost W.
Oh, that's right.
And boom, and maybe throw a Q out if you really need to clear it fast. And it's you know, plain and simple.
Yeah.
But I think it's really funny you bring that up. So I'm gonna address this as a two-parter because those are such wildly different questions. Like how to use your cooldowns in fights versus how to use them in laning, because one's kind of a long-term thought process and one's kind of a short-term thought process. But no, it's funny, like you mentioned that laning, my big issue with actually most Jaina players, and this is going all the way up to master and higher, is actually I don't feel they W the waves enough. And so I just looked it up. Jaina W has a 15-second cooldown, and if you are Jaina, you are almost assuredly drafted to be the wave clear for your team. And think about it this way. HOTS is a game where every 30 seconds you have to kill minions, and then you're free to do whatever you want until those minions come back, and then you kill the minions, and then you're free to do whatever you want. Wave clear enables you to rotate. It enables you to do camps. You know what I mean? Like if you're leaving the wave to go do camps, you're falling behind. More wave clear means more ability to do things. So think about it this way. Jaina W, 15-second cooldown. And Jaina, you're most likely going back and forth between two waves. It's not really common as Jaina that you're just sitting in one wave all the time. So if you have two waves every 30 seconds, that's 15 seconds per wave, right? Just on average. And your W has a 15-second cooldown. It's actually really common that you see a Jaina W one time for poke. Like in my opinion, actually, the only time you W a non-wave in the early game as Jaina is for a kill. Like straight up for a kill. Because a single W actually throws off that rhythm. There's like this perfect rhythm of like W mid wave, W bot wave, W mid wave, W bot wave on that perfect 15-second cooldown. that leads you into this good rhythm, and that allows you to go do these camps and to get for kills and all that. And I'm not saying don't ever W heroes, but that's just my experience with it. I'd obviously have to go back and look at your games, and we could talk about, you know, like, are you doing this too much? Are you doing it just right? Because it's entirely possible that you have really good uses for it. So that's just my personal experience with it. But I think it's important, you know, like, I was looking at that and I was thinking, how does this ability work? What is this hero's role? I said Jaina's drafted for wave clear. What's the specific cooldown of this? What happens if you mess it up? Like, don't just apply that same sort of thinking to every hero. You know, like, if I'm looking at heroes that don't have as much wave clear, I'm taking a different mindset to it. Like Tracer, I'm prioritizing my melees on heroes, for instance, because depending on your talents, you're getting ×2 to ×4 as much pulse bomb charge off of heroes. So it's on a really, really individualized basis. How often should you use your waves versus, or how often should you use your abilities on waves versus on heroes? But I would actually say, for most people, use your abilities on waves more, because waves are the lifeblood of Heroes of the Storm. You kill waves and they enable everything else in the game. And also, big thing, the more time you spend off the map, the more you are a threat to the enemy team. They don't know if you're ganking, they don't know if you're on a camp, they don't know if you're rotating way to the offlane or anything like that. And the more you use your abilities on the wave, the less time you spend in enemy vision. So I know that may not have been the answer you were expecting, but that's actually just how I feel about the early laning phase.
That actually kind of makes sense in the way that I have been on DPS. I have been auto-attacking heroes more, and ever since I've started doing that, instead of just using my abilities, like spamming my abilities, I have been getting high hero damage every single game, like the highest hero damage every single game. And in terms of that, I want to talk about what heroes we should be focusing in a team fight as a DPS.
Okay.
So if you're in a team fight, I know we've talked about multiple times about everybody says don't focus the tank. There are certain times where you can focus the tank if he's low and he's in your face and you know you can like one-shot him and kill him. But like you said, as a Tracer, as Jaina, who do you, and specifically since Jaina is very squishy, or both of them are very squishy, who do you want to be focusing as a DPS?
Okay. Again, I'm going to take this as a two-parter, and I just remembered I never got to the ability usage for the team fight. I spent all that time talking about laning phase. So I'd like to go back to that later, but I'll stick to this right now.
Okay.
It's a very different answer depending on which heroes. You're talking about Jaina. Jaina, I think of Jaina and I think burst. I think Jaina sees a hero, she vomits on her keyboard, just and that hero dies. She is not a hero. Like, yeah, her Q, you can chain it, and if you keep hitting it over and over after you're level 7, that reduces the cooldown if you hit a chilled target. That can be good poke, but it's not as consistent as something like a Li Ming. So I think of Jaina, I think burst. So completely, I'm just taking the idea, roles, tanks, assassins, support, I'm throwing that out the window. I don't even care. When I'm thinking of someone that can only burst, I'm thinking if Jaina's blowing all her abilities on someone, they have to die. And if you need someone to die when you blow all your abilities, you need to be hitting the same person as your team. So I would say the end-all be-all of just Jaina target focus is hit the same person as your team. Whereas Tracer, you know, or Valeera or something like that, if you're putting a few shots into someone else, obviously it's not good to not target focus, but you don't lose all your damage for not target focusing for a second, whereas Jaina sort of does. So, and that person may very well be the main tank. I doubt you're going to be way up in like the Lieutenant Morales' face as a Jaina, unless Morales made some very poor life choices.
In terms of positioning, yeah.
Yes. So, and your target focus a lot of times in an ideal situation, in a coordinated situation, is often determined by your main tank. You know, they're the person that's throwing out the CC. You want to follow up on that CC. So just honestly, a lot of times just hit what your team's hitting. And I don't even care what role that is. I don't care who it is. Hit who your team's hitting. Ideal situation, I'm trying to think about it. And honestly, it's just anyone that can die. Like, and that can be a lot of different heroes. Muradin can die if you just CC him and everybody throws everything on him. Anybody that can die, whoever your team's hitting for Jaina. Tracer, whole different beast entirely. And this is another thing, you know, you really have to look at every hero as an assassin player with a very individualized basis and understand what this hero is good at. Tracer is a hero that says, I don't want anyone near me. I just want the guy I'm hitting, and I want me. I don't want to stand next to my teammates, because enemies will throw abilities at your teammates. They won't even be trying to hit you, and just by virtue of AoE, they will hit you. And Tracer is so squishy, and she just doesn't want to take damage. She says, I'm going to sit on the outskirts of fights until I see a kill, or I'm going to pressure the backline. Like, they're basically the two main modes of Tracer, is just sitting on the backline, just auto-attack harassing, or just hard diving. Or sitting on the front line hard harassing, or hard diving the backline. So that there's a lot less focus on just... you still want to go on the same person as the tank, but Tracer, you're focusing on just being safe, sitting on the outskirts of fights, just sitting there getting free constant damage, and just sort of being a mosquito to the enemy team until you see that first opportunity.
You just gotta think of, I mean, for Tracer, I think you can relate. If you've ever actually played Overwatch, it's a very similar play style. She translates very well because she's meant for that.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're really good. Like she just is meant to be that nuisance until she finds that kill target that she's looking for. What
about Genji? Is Genji kind of the same idea as Tracer, or?
Yes, actually. Like a lot of people, you see them right at the start of the fight, Ian pop that deflect and then D out, and they've got no abilities, no kill pressure, and they just gotta.
Yep.
I hate that.
And that's not what you do. That's not what you do. No, Genji actually is, when I play him, I'm kind of in a similar mindset as Tracer, because he has that ability to pressure the backline and also just sort of be a nuisance to the enemy team, very mobile. A lot of times they take up the same role. That's why a lot of times you don't really see Tracer Genji on the same team, unless it's like something like BOE where you don't need that much wave clear. So I would say very much that applies to a hero like Genji. Tracer, you're trying to stand aloof, don't want to be next to your teammates, don't want to be next to anybody else, just the person you're hitting, that's it, dodge skill shots. Jaina, you're saying, I'm going to be near my team, I'm ready to follow up, I'm short range, tank is going in, vomit on your keyboard. Vala, you're prioritizing just keeping your buff up. The name is escaping me, it's like Hot Pursuit is the name of the talent at level 1. Just keeping your buff up, staying safe, and just doing constant damage every time the tank steps up, because what people don't realize, Hots, no wards. For the most part, I know there are a few exceptions like Cho'Gall and whatnot. Hots, no wards. So the tanks are the wards. The tanks provide vision. In exchange for that, the tanks get damaged when they step up, and that's your job, and not enough people recognize that. Anytime you can auto-attack an enemy that is in your range as a ranged DPS, you need to be doing it because it's free damage. 99% of the time, that free damage is on the tank. So there's so much free harass on tanks that people need to take up more. But again, if you're Jaina, you're not really looking, like, you might auto-attack him with your little pew pew, and it does like 6 damage. But that's much more of a thing on like a Vala or a Tracer. So again, very, very individualized.
Now, I want to talk about Greymane Syndrome. I get a lot of questions about this in stream, especially for if I'm playing Kerrigan or Greymane or any type of melee assassin. I always say that you have to be really, really patient. So let me explain what Greymane Syndrome is. Greymane Syndrome is basically when you dive into a 5-man on the enemy team and just blow up. You have to be really patient with melee heroes, especially on Kerrigan. Or you're as a Kerrigan or a Greymane, your job is to clean up. Your job is to poke and poke and poke as much as you can. And once you see somebody at like 10 health, that's when you can dive in and just blow them up and then get out.
I mean, I can relate on that factor because, believe it or not, Maiev is played very similar to that.
Oh yeah, Maiev too.
She is very versatile in what she does. She has 2 different modes. She has the standard, I'm a watcher, I'm waiting for someone making a mistake, or I'm the engage. But there are times where, like, I watch people will like pick her in a game, and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna judge the hell out of you. But you'll just go in as Maiev. Oh, I got a 5-man bind, and then your team's like in Timbuktu, and you didn't do anything. You know, some people don't realize that patience is gonna make a huge difference, especially with Greymane is one of those heroes. Like you said, he explodes. I was like, yeah, that happens. Like, people will go in on a full health team and think they're going to do this amazing thing that doesn't exist. you know.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to say, Vipey, I really love that you mentioned the different modes of playstyle. That's when I'm coaching people, this is actually like one of my #1 issues with people, is I'm saying you're playing the hero the same all the time. You're playing at the same level 1 as you did level 20. You're playing at the same when your team's looking to engage and when you're looking to team fight. And that's like my biggest complaint. It was the exact same complaint I had with Nesper when I started working with Scythe Esports. I said, you're playing Tracer the same no matter what time of the game it is, no matter what your team's looking like. And I just love that you mentioned that, because that's such a concept that even high-level players often fail to understand. And that it's important to recognize and look at your specific assassin. I'm going to touch a lot about, the individualized knowledge of all this, but Maiev has that AoE DPS in addition to providing an engage for your team, just as Hanzo has that poke, that auto attack damage, but also the engage with Dragon Arrow. And you play completely differently when you're looking for them in a lot of situations. Not all the time, but in a lot of situations. So let me see here. I kind of got derailed just thinking about like, oh wow, that was such a good point. Okay, Greymane Syndrome. That's what we were on. I was like, what were we talking about? Okay. I just latched onto that. Okay, so Greymane Syndrome. Kagirii, I think you got like 80% of it just absolutely on the dot correct. I love it. You were talking about you want to poke, and then engage. And I'm not even saying you got any wrong. I'm saying there's just more to it though. But what you did say, loved it, everything about it. So what people need to realize about Greymane in particular is, and this is going into stuff that a lot of players, I'm talking vast majority, do not use. Greymane, his Worgen form, is not only a finisher, but should also be thought of as mobility. When you're running away in team fights, say you've been aggressive, you go past the minion wave onto them, you can often jump back to minions to get away. When you jump onto them in Worgen form, that's a jump in itself, quite a decently long range, especially if you take Dark Flight, which increases its range at 13. And then you get a roll after with Disengage that turns you back into human. That's even more mobility. Not only is it a finisher, but it's mobility. There's another big one, very famous case. I don't remember the name of the exact player, some European sub-pro, where Go for the Throat, for instance, the ult that transforms you into wolf form as you jump onto someone, has unstoppable frames as you're going in it. So it's a lot. That's the thing a lot of people don't know. As you're jumping on someone as Greymane, turning into that Worgen, you are immune to CC. So this is actually huge for the mobility, because this can get you kills you wouldn't otherwise get. If someone's under a fort, you know how every time you get hit by a fort, you get hit by a keep. You have that massive, painful slow where it feels like your character can't do anything and can't auto attack. You can actually time it as Greymane so that you go for the throat and it hits you during that jump. And then you don't get the debuff and you just shred them and you're just slapping them and they die, and then you just roll out of tower range and it's like nothing ever happened.
Most
Very
people
hard
don't.
to pull off. What's up?
Oh, no, sorry. Most people don't realize too. Before we get too far on it, with Go for the Throat, most people just think, okay, cool, I'm gonna go for the throat. I get the kill. I get that reset. I'm just gonna blow it on somebody else. No, you have the ability to actually use your E disengage to either extend yourself further to get an actual potential kill, and you still have plenty of time to go back again into Worgen form. So you have multiple motions, and then you can derail again and go backwards. It's just like he put this below it. Oh crap, I'm just gonna go. Like
you see him just double tap that R, and it's like no, you're missing so much. Like, and that's people only thinking of it in terms of that finishing potential. Like, you don't need to execute someone a second time. That only matters if you take the level 20, which you shouldn't be taking. Point
at that camera.
His basic attack splash is busted. If I see you taking anything else, I will come over and slap you.
Through the screen.
But you don't need an execute with that second one. Again, fantastic point, might be just but no, I think Kagirii, fantastic point on the finishing. You not even gonna say anything about it. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. And Vipey, I love it as well with the notes about the reset. That's how I think you should think about Greymane. Poke. I'm going to only use my Worgen form if I need to get somewhere or if I need to kill someone.
Yeah.
And
honestly,
if you're sitting around and slapping people all the time, you're doing it wrong.
And honestly, I can tell you that, Kagirii, I was legitimately, like, when you were like, Greymane Syndrome, I'm like, I kind of think I know what this means, but I'm not sure. So when you're like, when Kagirii was like, I'm going to explain this, I'm like, thank God, because I don't know. I'm like, I know this. So it was really good, Kags.
Oh, you're welcome, Vipey. We have a question from the chat. It's from Mesa.
Okay.
He says, how to position as a stealth dive hero like Zeratul or Valeera to maximize your stealth mechanic benefits?
Ooh.
Are they strict ambushers, and when to go in? This is what I want to know. I suck at stealthing because they still see me even when I'm just standing there.
Okay. Oh, let's go for it, Vipey.
I can get. I'm not a Zeratul player, so I am not gonna touch that. But I can tell you with Valeera, at least from my point of view on her, she is a utility, in my opinion, and she has a serious gank potential. But it's all about positioning with her because she does not have a teleport for the most part, other than her short backstab mechanic. Other than that, that's all I got for them. Compared to like a Nova right now, Q build you just kind of Q build Vala-esque it, you know. But and Nova's also being abused right now in the
Poor Nova.
She has that murky friend. But... All right, continue. I'm sorry, Mochrie.
I'm the complete opposite. I don't play any Valeera, so I'm going to just leave that alone. I'm sorry, I can't help you there. Actually, I'm not going to leave it completely alone. I will say, when we were incorporating Valeera into our strategies, I wasn't the Valeera player at our college, but I did understand what she provided to the team. And I will say one thing that I think Valeera players need to do more is just sit somewhere. Like, literally just, where do you think the team is going to rotate through? If you're on Dragonshire and you think the enemy team's going to rotate through that little mid-triangle area, you can just park right there. Not only you're providing vision, but you're stopping the rotates. If the enemy team doesn't feel like they can rotate, you're hurting their morale, and you're also just actually doing significant damage to them. A lot of times, good Valeera play is just camping a bush, like that you know the enemy team is going to walk through. If they ever walk through it as a group, you now have vision of where they are as a group. If they walk through it solo, you have a kill. I remember going over this with Cavalier Guest. Again, I'm going to bring him up a lot. He's been such a good macro mind and helped me understand the game more. There have been good Valeera pro games where the players may be sitting still for like a good 30-40% of the game. And just watching rotations. But I will say that is a style of play that is much more suited to coordinated play. It's a very big caveat that I have to express. Where players are playing very disciplined and players are utilizing the vision they give you. We've all had those situations where you see 3 people running at someone in lane and you're spam pinging them and you're like, back up, please. Oh God, I can see they're all coming.
And they're like,
and they just die. They're like, towers?
Towers do so much.
I can kill towers?
I need this.
I win these. And it's like, no. So I will say that style of play might not get you that much mileage and uncoordinated, and I don't know exactly the frame of your question, so I apologize for that. I spoke mostly on the coordinated side of things, but that is what I can offer about coordinated Valeera. So, moving on to... Sorry.
No, go ahead. Moving on to what? Go ahead.
Okay. Zeratul. The biggest thing I would recommend for literally anyone playing Zeratul, just before you even play a single game of Zeratul, unless maybe you just want to learn the abilities first, you can read the abilities, go watch Rich's 20-minute YouTube guide on how to play Zeratul. It covers it in ridiculous depth. It goes over combos that you would never think of. I played like 50 games of Zeratul, and I was struggling. I watched this video one time, and I started dominating Master Grandmaster games. It was insane. So that's the biggest thing. It goes into a lot of stuff that you would never think of if you were just mashing your face at it. Zeratul, speaking on positioning. So it's weird because as Zeratul, I'm not that focused on myself. I like it's just something that I don't really have to think about when I play. I'm not saying it's not something you shouldn't think about. I'm just saying it comes very naturally to me. It's not something I have to focus on. In fact, when I'm playing Zeratul, I'm thinking about the enemy team. Because I'm looking at, are they clumping up? So I can get that EQ-E combo, blink in, Q, wormhole out. I'm basically just trying to stay at the outskirts of fights. I'm never sitting there auto-attacking the main tank. You know, I talked about main tank steps up, you poke him. That's something your Valo should do. That's something your Tracer should do. That's not what your Zeratul does. You want to sit on the side, wait for the enemy team to clump. Also, you wait for the enemy team to clump, especially after 16. This is when you can start looking into the triple Q combo, which is something that only is activated after Void Slash at 16 that lowers your Q combo or cooldown. And again, that's something that's 100% explained in Rich's Zeratul guide on YouTube. So what I would say here, and harkening back to Vipey, Zeratul has 3 major phases of the game that you need to consider. 1 through 7, you're useless. Or 1 through 6, don't even think about it. You're garbage in fights. You are a soak bot. You are one of the worst heroes. 1 to 6, straight up. You're useless. 7 through 15, this is your mid game. You're starting to get Void Prison. You're getting more damage. You have Wormhole now, so you can make those plays where you're jumping in on people, queuing them, Wing, autoing, wormholing out, and you have a lot more damage potential, and you have that playmaking potential with Void Prison. This is where you need to start looking at your Q plays, because you can't really go for Q plays for 6 levels, because you can't blink back out. So that's where I look at very much like executing people, executing backlines specifically, executing isolated targets, making big synergy plays with my teammates with Void Prison, or isolating the team, saying, I'm going to VP these 2 guys, let's just shred the other guys that aren't in the VP. 16 and onward is where you enter the 3rd phase of Zeratul play, and you start thinking to yourself, I need to hit that triple Q combo. I'd screw everything else. I'm going to blink on people, I'm going to Q them, I'm going to wormhole out, I'm going to Vorpal Blade back in, I'm going to Q them again, I'm going to Void Prison, and I'm going to Q them again, and they're all dead. Like, you have 3 different, massively different playstyles, 1 through 6, 7 through 15, 16 and onward, and if you adjust for that accordingly, I think your play will massively improve.
You're making me want to play Zeratul really badly right now. I'm like, I'm just gonna like after this, I'm gonna go on there and I'm just gonna be like QM Zeratul.
Watch that Rich guide first. I'm telling you, life-changing stuff. Literally, I played over 50 games, struggled, watched one video one time.
Yeah.
Dominated.
Well,
Huge.
since we were talking about Valeera and Zeratul and what targets to choose when you're playing these characters, I want to talk about when to use Butcher's Charge, when to use Tracer's Sticky Bomb, Sylvanas' Mind Control, and what heroes to target, to prioritize with those specific talents. Because I have more than once seen a Butcher charge a full health Diablo, and I just want to cry. So
I don't know if I can stop these people, but I'll do my best.
Let's talk about that. Single target abilities for Butcher, Tracer, Sylvanas, what have you, and what targets to choose, or what targets to prioritize.
Okay, so basically what we're getting at is that these are engage abilities. Like, you would agree with me there?
Yes.
Or at least people use them that way.
What if I said no? What if I said no, I don't agree with you?
That would be a struggle.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so these are engage abilities, and I think once we recognize that, that opens the door to looking at other heroes that this also applies to, because there are a lot of heroes that are in the DPS role that can provide that engage for you, or heroes that are kind of risky in their engage. And the biggest thing you need to look at is, how much am I risking myself with this engage? And you'll notice that the heroes that you freak out about on these engages are the ones that risk their own bodies for the engages. Like, I think you asked me about Butcher, Muradin, I don't know who else.
Oh, Muradin was one. Butcher, Tracer, and Sylvanas, her mind control.
Yeah,
because that like, makes you that puts you in like a stasis.
First of all, I don't like mind control. I'll just say that right now.
I can tell you,
it gets chosen a lot.
I can tell you one thing about mind control is, number one, silence. Silence is just beyond better. But I have like probably like 30 clips of like Zeratul players coming in to try and kill me as Sylvanas, mind controlling them and killing them. Nice. The ability to, if you can skill shot it, it's a very slow one. If you can get it on a hypermobile hero, Sylvanas' damage will kill them before they even finish being mind control. But pick silence, please.
No, I think it's important that I point this out. What you're talking about is no longer an engage. It's it's defensive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. True.
So,
yeah.
I mean, all of those abilities you mentioned, my sticky bomb.
Well, that's the name of a specific Tracer talent. I just want to get it out there. I do not think you should pick Sticky Bomb. It's Pulse Bomb is the name of the ability.
Oh yeah, Pulse Bomb. Sorry.
Sticky Bomb is the slow radius.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But I want your opinion. Because I love Tracer back in the day. I have a high level Tracer. Out of the 3 ultimate upgrades, I used to see. I used to pick Quantum Spike, but now I pick what's the other one? The charge and range. I don't really care for the range. I just don't. For me, like the percentage reduction, I was just like, but it's still really good. But I don't know.
Okay. Oh man, trust me, this is something that I've raged behind closed doors about plenty of times. I've often said to people, so like people are trying to tell me to pick pulse rounds back when Quantum Spike was 10%, and I always thought that was blasphemy. Because it used to have more damage. Sorry if you can hear my roommate snoring in the background.
I chalked it up to wind.
But no, okay, so Quantum Spike. If you're good, this is the end of the discussion. You pick Quantum Spike.
Hammer!
So that's it. But say you entertain the idea of picking something else because you like a little spice in your life or whatever. Quantum Spike's too boring. You're tired of winning games. All right? So, pulse rounds, in my opinion, I think it looks super good on paper. When you don't fully analyze it, and you don't really think too hard about it, it looks amazing. But if you actually start to think about it, when do I get value out of this? I don't think it actually nearly stands up to close examination. I'm going to go why into this. So, pulse rounds, the first thing it does is it doubles the cast range of Pulse Bomb. This is not important because when you're bursting people, one, you want to get as close to them as possible to guarantee the Pulse Bomb will land, because obviously the closer you are, the more high percentage it's going to hit them. Second of all, you want to be meleeing them at the same time for the burst combo. That just gives you as much burst as possible. Range, not important. You shouldn't even be using it because you should always be getting as close as possible. Second off, the other thing that Pulse Rounds does is it doubles your charge rate from your auto attacks. It doesn't double your charge rate from your melee, and melee is actually half of your charge percentage. It's roughly like 40 to 50 depending on the game. But melee does a lot for you, and it doesn't increase that at all. And not only that, but these bombs aren't hitting that hard because you don't have that Quantum Spike. And Quantum Spike is huge. Quantum Spike is bigger than people give it credit for other reasons too. Like one thing a lot of people don't know, this is a very niche case, but it actually does have its applications. Quantum Spike means that Tracer, because it applies to buildings, Tracer is the only character in the game that can deal percentage damage to buildings because of Quantum Spike.
I thought Sticky Bomb doesn't stick to buildings.
It does not stick to buildings. Pulse Bomb does not stick to buildings. But, and again, this is something the vast majority of the community does not know. If you drop a Pulse Bomb and someone walks over it and stands on the middle, on the ground, it deals full damage, including the Quantum Spike 7% bonus damage.
Huh.
And it doesn't... What's up?
No. So I'm saying, going back to like Kagiri's question, so you're saying like when it comes to engaging for that Pulse Bomb and going in for it, would you agree it's like kind of like either if you're getting the kill and you're putting yourself in a really bad position, having your recall is like the must? Like, or is there a moment where you don't think that engage is risky enough?
No, I'm just thinking about my answer. So, probably the number one complaint that I have about Tracer play, and I love that you touched on this, is wasting recall too much. Mm-hmm. Recall enables everything in Tracer play. You can't be aggressive without it, and you can't be defensive without it. You can't do anything without it, actually. Recall, when you press it, that's your I'm done button. That's your this is all I'm going to get button. I'm now much less of a hero after I press this button. I'm pressing this because I need to survive. That's the mindset you need to have. Like, when I'm blowing recall, I'm doing it either because if I don't, I will die, or because it allows me to kill someone else. Like, those are basically the only times I ever press recall. I press recall far fewer than almost every other Tracer player out there. Because it lowers your capabilities so much when you have it on cooldown. So I would say, going into almost any engage, you need to have recall up in order to be able to facilitate that aggressive play. So, yes, I think that it's almost entirely dependent on whether you have recall. So I love that you touched on that. Sorry for going off on that side rant about level 10 for so long.
No, you're welcome.
No, it's fine.
Right. I just wanted to definitely point out that specifically for Butcher, mostly prioritize low health heroes or very squishy heroes. Do not go in on a full health Diablo and think that you can
it's not gonna
get
work.
a damage. Yeah.
Why not?
No. This is actually one of my favorite things, and it really helps convey when I'm coaching someone and they made a bad decision, but they don't see why.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things to tell them is assume everything goes right. Assume literally the perfect scenario. This still does not work. You charging a Diablo at full health, you can hit everything. He can stand still for 8 seconds. You can auto attack him a bunch of times, and then he can walk away.
Yeah.
And he'll get out. You have to and so when something doesn't work under the perfect circumstances, that's how you know it literally can never work and it's a bad play. And so I fully agree with you. Charging full health Diablo is a bad play. And I think what's up? I think what triggers this sort of discrepancy or confusion in players is you have to have an entirely different mode, going back into the different mindsets thing. You have to have an entirely different mode on the gank and in the team fight. On the gank, you can be so much more aggressive with your engages. As Muradin, you're looking to jump out of the bushes, even in the early game, and just hop on someone, throw that hammer, just stomp them. Same exact thing with Butcher. Because, again, when I mentioned this, when you engage, you're putting yourself at risk. But on a gank, you're not in a full team fight. There are not 5 people to punish you for it. So you need the aggression more than anything. Without the risk of punishment, you're just trying to be aggressive. So Butcher players see this. They go in these ganks, they go to these lanes, and they gank someone, they charge them out of the bush. It works like a charm. They've got 80 meat in the first 3 minutes or whatever, and they're like, life is good. Oh, it's time to team fight. I'm going to do the exact same thing. And then it doesn't work anymore. So, what's up?
It's just funny that people don't think of it this way. Heroes of the Storm devs do a fantastic job of taking a hero from a game and putting it in a game with the same mindset and quote-unquote role play as what they are meant to do.
Yeah, like the fantasy.
The fantasy of the hero is completely there. Butcher, for example, is a prime one. He, in Diablo, was a gank-style counter. It scared the crap out of you when it comes through.
Yeah, he's terrifying.
And so that's kind of what they put him into Heroes of the Storm, to be the same kind of style. Not to be that engaged hero in the same sense as Maev. She's a watcher. She is sitting there. You're supposed to keep an eye on the fight, see where your advantage is, and take it to when you can do it. And there's so thinking in a hero in a fantasy sense, sometimes in this game is not the best because, like, oh, you know, like I'm a Prometheus, beep boop, beep boop, you know. But there is a yeah, right.
Murky.
Blah, blah, blah. There is an actual theoretical sense to that. And thinking of it that way, it's not a bad thing all of the time. It actually might help you in a way of thinking of when you can engage and what you can do. But for butchers that charge in at, you know, full health teams, you're looking for that kill kind of like Tracer does. You're looking for that, okay, this hero is weak and out of position. I can definitely get to it.
Out of position. That's the big thing.
And the one thing I want people to seriously notice, Butcher's charge, you are unstoppable until the last split second of that charge. So you can actually, as an Ana player, I have Lily turn around and put him to sleep before he even hits me. Like, so you can be countered. You're not unstoppable the whole way in. You're not unstoppable in the wind up, and you're not unstoppable on the impact. So remember, in between that, you got to be careful what you're doing, especially if you're trying to charge in.
I like that you specified Maev, because this is another thing where you have to understand how individual heroes are different. Yeah, they might both have E's that let you charge in on the enemy team, and then you might be able to root them in place after. But Maev's, she can choose not to take it. She can throw out her spirit and say, wait, bad idea. And she can say, never mind, my bad. Yeah. And then also, Maev doesn't physically travel there. She teleports in, so Maev can't get hit the whole way in. And then Maev, once she's there and has her root on everybody, can say, oh, I'm going to jump and not take any damage. Like, and this is, and again, you know, people will say, I see Maev engaging with her E and running in and rooting everybody and doing damage. And I'm going to do the same thing with Butcher because it worked when I ganked this Tracer a second ago or whatever. Like, it's just recognize how different heroes are different. Recognize that you need to play entirely different in ganks and in team fights. Recognize what your hero fails at. Too many people don't understand the difference between engaging on ganks and engaging in team fights. Again, we mentioned Muradin. I want to touch on that before we forget about it. Muradin, doesn't want to be that aggressive with his E's before 13. 13 is when he gets healing static. Every person that your W hits heals you for 5% of your maximum health. This has heavy synergy with your avatar, which increases your maximum health, thereby increasing your healing from healing static. When you get those health buffs, you can be so much more aggro. But for the first 12 levels, you're not looking to be that aggressive with your E's in team fights. In ganks, however, even in the first few levels, you're going hard on those ganks. You're jumping over walls. That's another big thing. You want to be jumping out of walls or over walls, out of bushes, all that kind of stuff. You don't want enemies to see you until the very last second. But just recognize that difference in aggression from ganks to team fights.
I want to also, like, this topic actually excites me because this sparks joy. I honestly really want to bring up the fact of Sylvanas.
Okay.
Her E is similar to my Ev's, but you don't go backwards. Okay. The biggest problem people that are picking up Sylvanas now is they are using their E as damage and as stack gaining, depending on what talents you're picking. Up until, I think, 16, I think you get Windrunner, or is it 13? One of the two. I want to highly stress not to, unless you know you're perfectly safe and in a great place in life, don't be throwing your E out because you want to clear a wave or because you want to get damage on somebody. It does nothing. All it does, if you pick the talent that gives you the 3 instant curse charges, that's when you want to use it during a team fight, when you know you're no threat whatsoever. Or if you have Windrunner, because you can easily teleport and then use it to return, which also could be risky, but you have to utilize that, as that is your only escape as Sylvanas. Your only escape. So if you use it for a damage, you're putting yourself at disadvantage.
But
overall,
my favorite kills are when you kill them with her E. They have like 0.5 health left, and you just like touch their butts with the E, and they blow up. It's like the best thing ever.
The Banshee is like,
and then they go bing.
Well, I mean, if they're running away for their lives, then you're fine. But like, I see too many Sylvanas players, even before her rework, use the E for damage, and there's nothing to it. It's just putting yourself in a bad position.
Yeah, it's like wasting your recall. You basically waste your escape.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, 100%. And like I'm just gonna keep going back to the modes thing. Like straight up, you have a different mode when you don't have your survivability abilities on you. You need to play safer. And that's how you should organize your playstyles in your own head.
And I will shout out to the Heroes devs, because they are really, these reworks on these heroes are really giving them, most of them at least, are very diverse. What you can do. Sylvanas is one of them. She has so many different builds you can do with her right now. There's still a better one, but there still is a lot of them. And each time you pick those tree sets, it's a completely different play style than what you're used to. If you go with auto attack Maiev, you are basically like a Vala in a way. You're going with stack Maiev, you're going Maiev, Sylvanas, you know what I'm talking about. Sylvanas, you're basically going as a Lunara style playstyle. So there's completely different. It's all about knowing what you're supposed to do and knowing when to do it.
It's about knowing what your hero is capable of in early game and late game. Speaking of which, I wanted to talk specifically about. I want to touch like super quick on this. Early game heroes versus late game heroes. Like you said, the Zeratul. Zeratul's basically like useless in early game. Yes. Kel'Thuzad is also a late game hero. What? He's a late game hero.
Oh, he is.
He is
useless.
Well, he's not useless, but he's totally he's a late game hero. Who are some good early game heroes that if you're looking to, I don't know, if you're very aggressive, who are those heroes that you should pick? I know a lot of late game heroes, but I'm not sure exactly.
That's such an interesting question, though.
Yeah.
Because right now the late game is king in my opinion. So it's not something that I think about too often. I will say that a lot of games can absolutely be run over if you just gank early, and early ganks are really well done by mobility out of vision. So like I mentioned earlier, Muradin ease you out of the bush, Butcher ease you out of the bush, Tracer Qs you out of the bush. You go from literally no one in your vision to, oh my god, I'm getting chain stunned and there are 3 people on me. Good ganking is how you can solidify an early game lead. Let me see here. If you do the mercenaries and the other team does not, which shouldn't happen in any coordinated game, but happens very often in uncoordinated games, you will just easy snowball off of that. So I would say ganks in any type of game, they don't happen as often in coordinated, and mercenaries in uncoordinated play are huge. They're huge in every game type, but you can expect both teams to take mercenaries in coordinated. But if you go spam mercenary camps in the early game and the other team doesn't, you will get ahead. So ganks and mercenaries, I would say. So think about that. What's good at that? Like, it's kind of a weird situation, you know, like Zeratul might be really good at ganking people in the early game if you're roaming with his team. And so my Tracer, even though these are historically late game scaling heroes, you just need to think about that. Like, I can't give off like the specific list of heroes that applies to, but I can say, like, ETC Tyrande, for instance, it's very, very easy to just run away with the game in the first 5 minutes with that combo. So if I had to give you specific examples, ETC Tyrande, Muradin, Tracer, as much as I hate to say it, Butcher.
What about
like
Sonya?
Beep. What?
Yeah?
Sonya can get camps pretty easily. Like when she gets
100%. Oh, she's fantastic at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree there. I was focusing on the ganking side of things, but you're absolutely right about the Sonya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else you guys want to touch on? That's all of my questions that I have.
I never got to talk. I didn't forget. I never got to talk about how you use your abilities in team fights. I talked about how you want to prioritize your abilities in laning phase, but I never got to touch about team fights.
Go for it.
So this is actually a really big thing that is huge at very, very high level play. And it's actually not that hard to get once you know everyone's kits. You have to know how every hero in the game works, or at least all the heroes in your games that you're playing works. But basically, you have to ask yourself, what's the ideal usage of my ability? Like, if you're Valeera and there's a Tracer on the enemy team, your ideal usage of your abilities is not chain stunning the Diablo. It's chain stunning the Tracer and getting a kill on her, because maybe your team isn't capable of getting a kill otherwise. And so, for instance, as Tracer, I might say to myself, okay, after 10 I get percentage damage on my Pulse Bomb. I can kill the Garrosh at that point, because when Garrosh is very low, he doesn't have a lot of health, but he has a lot of armor. Percentage damage bypasses armor. I'm the way that we kill Garrosh. I'm saving my Pulse Bomb. Assuming that Garrosh is the kill target and I can't kill a squishy, I'm saving my Pulse Bomb for Garrosh. Oh, they have a Valeera. I know that Valeera wants to stun me. I'm going to just run away from Valeera every fight. I'm going to get what auto attacks I can. And as long as she's not unstealthing, if she's just chasing me and I'm auto-attacking, I'm winning. If she stuns someone else, I'm winning, because she's using a subpar target for her abilities. So that's how you can manipulate and understand their ideal play, and also understand your ideal play. Those are 2 huge examples with Tracer play. Just think to yourself, literally, what is the best possible scenario for me with my abilities? Like, what is the dream scenario? That's realistic, obviously. They're not just going to walk up and do a 5-man power slide. What's the dream scenario? How can I set myself up to make that likely? What is their dream scenario? How can I make that unrealistic for them? I'm trying to think about another way that you can put this into action. Let me see here. Like, so go for it, Vipey.
No, I want to post on one. I want to talk about one thing before you get too far from it to give some light on. When you get stunned by Valeera as a Tracer, 2 things happen. You get stunned for, 2.5 seconds? Which is a long time. Okay, and that's terrible for Tracer because she can't move. On top of that, after that stun finishes, you're also blinded. So you are getting at a huge disadvantage. Just want to make sure everyone knows that that's a huge big deal, not just you're being stunned. In general, you're also not doing damage afterwards.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and the Garrote silence is also just ridiculously oppressive to play against just Tracer.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why you have to alter your playstyle. Like, basically just play for your ideal, play against their ideal. Valeera wants to stun you, don't let Valeera stun you. It sounds really simple, but when you start thinking about it with every interaction across every hero, that's when it sort of webs out and becomes very complex. But yeah, if I had to drill anything into people's heads that are watching this, It's understand what your hero wants to be doing, do that. Understand what their heroes want to be doing, don't let them do it. Understand how your hero changes playstyle depending on the time of the game and what type of fight you're having. Biggest things right there.
Okay, we have one more question from the chat. It's Mesa again. How to use Dragon Blade in team fights? I see Genji getting blown up 0.7 seconds after he shouts that. I don't know how to. So when is the ideal time to use Dragon Blade?
Okay, so big question I ask myself when I'm picking my Genji ult. And by the way, you should know your ult before the game starts. Literally at draft, in the loading screen, none of your talents should be a surprise. You should not get to a talent and be wondering what talent to pick. Let me see. So anyway, going into Dragon Blade, first of all, a lot of people pick Dragon Blade in situations that are awful for it. Again, this is something where you're thinking about what does an ideal Dragon Blade look like? And you're thinking to yourself, okay, Dragon Blade, it requires me to have some uninterrupted time alone with their backline, where I can just kind of meander about and slash and slash and slash and slash. And you start thinking about that, and you're like, okay, that requires me to have a good 4 seconds on their backline, no CC. When can I actually realistically pull that off? And if they have a Diablo, the answer is probably never. You know what I mean? Or if they have a Varian. If they have a Varian who's just chilling with his backline and you try to go in and Dragon Blade their backline, you're just going to get taunted and die. So the very, very first question to ask yourself is, does Dragon Blade even work here? And in order for you to know, does Dragon Blade even work here, you have to ask yourself, am I going to be able to sit on their backline and slash and slash and slash without dying? And that means you either need to pick it when you're not into a ridiculous amount of hard CC, or you need something like Uther's Divine Shield, because Uther can Divine Shield you, and then he can throw a cleanse on you, and you're looking at 4 straight seconds of just being completely CC immune, and for a lot of it, damage immune as well, and having faster movement speed. Those are the 2 big conditions. Not into heavy CC, or you have a Divine Shield on your team. That's when Dragon Blade works. A lot of times, it's not even about how they used it. It's the fact that they picked it in a situation where it's garbage. And I see those situations where it's oh, Varian, Diablo, whatever. No, I'm going X straight up. It's a lot of times about the pick more than about the use to me.
Yep. And that's when the fantasy becomes nothing.
Yeah, that's... All right. Well, and if you guys don't have anything else to add, I think we will be done for tonight. Anything else you want to drill into people's minds?
It's pronounced Mochrie.
It's Mochrie, not Mochrie. What I thought it was.
I had an NGS caster call me Morochi.
Oh, that's okay. That's even worse than what I
kind of like that. It's spicy.
Morochi. It's like Marachi.
Spicy.
And
I
still think about it to this day. Every few days, I'm just like, how?
Laying in bed.
Yeah. I'm rearranging the letters. How did he even?
Extra letters.
Well, Mochrie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Do you want to remind everybody where we can find you or follow you elsewhere on the internet?
Okay, so thank you for this opportunity. It's been fantastic being on here and hanging out with you guys. I've actually really enjoyed this. You guys are great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
But you guys can find me at Mochrie1713. I'm going to go drop a fast message in the Twitch chat.
Do it.
Yep. So let me see. You guys can find me at Mochrie1713 on Twitch and on YouTube. I haven't been posting as much of those as I should, but I'm actually really looking to get back into that. I have a lot of great content ideas. Now that I'm not how do I put it? I'm ready to share a lot more Tracer knowledge. For a long time, I was keeping it under lock and key. I was only Scythe Esports gets to know this. And now I'm more ready to educate the world now that HGC is not a thing as much anymore, and I just want to get out there. So, anyways, Mochrie1713, Twitch, YouTube, Reddit, all that kind of stuff. I'm just Mochrie on HeroesHearth. And also, if you guys want to see more of me and actually see this in action, if the enemy team will ever let me pick Tracer, which a lot of times does not happen, I'm going to be playing in Fight Night tomorrow night. I don't remember the exact time. But that'll be on the Twitch HeroesHearth channel, right exactly where we are right now. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll be playing with my Scythe Esports friends. They're absolutely fantastic. But I think it's going to be a good match against Revive Esports. And I'm hoping to come back. Talking with Workhorse, and I'd love to do more of these. I'm trying to do more ready ups and all that kind of stuff. So you'll see more of me even here. So it's been fun.
That's exciting. Thank you so much. And Vipey, where can we find you?
You can find me here bi-weekly.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You can also find me twitch.tv/Vipey or Instagram, Twitter, Vipey_.
There you go.
There you go. We can find you.
Me, Kagirii.
Yeah, it's your turn. Come on, people need to know.
Twitch.tv/Kagirii with Kagirii, 2 I's at the end. _ Kagirii on Twitter and Kagirii on Instagram, and then also here bi-weekly, every Thursday, almost bi-weekly on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. PST. Thank you so much for turning into the 5th episode of Eye of the Storm. I hope our discussions gave you some things to think about and gave you some new things to try during your next Hero League or Team League game. You can please follow our casters, players, and partners on the HeroesHearth website at heroeshearth.com and twitch.tv/HeroesHearth. And like we mentioned before, you can catch us here bi-weekly on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. PST. We are also on YouTube at HeroesHearth, Spotify, and iTunes. Did I forget one? I remembered the Spotify. Yay! All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Nexus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll see you in the Nexus. All right. Bye, guys.